Ethnic changes were inevitably reflected in language. The vulgar Latin, which had been the lingua franca of the late Western Empire, was gradually broken down into a bevy of Baudelarized Neo-Latinate idioms, from Portuguese to Romanian. Latin pater drifted towards padre in Spanish and Italian, towards père in French, towards tata in Romanian. The linguistic transitions were very slow. In the case of French, the vulgar Latin vernacular romance of Gaul passed through three distinct phases: 8th century, Old French, 11th, Middle French, 14th, before a recognizable variety of modern French was achieved. New grammar and new word forms evolved as the old Latin declensions, conjugations, and inflections were dropped. Bonum, bonam, bonas moved towards bon, bonne, and bonne with an S. Rex became le roi. Amat changed to M, Regina to la reine. The earliest text in Romance, the Strasbourg Oath, dates from 843, by which time the kings of France had stopped speaking Germanic Frankish altogether. Britain was one of several ex-Roman provinces where Latin was completely wiped out. Greek persisted in the Eastern Empire, both as the official language and in many places, especially in Asia Minor, as the vernacular. But several areas, including the Peloponnese, were for a period wholly or partly Slavicized. One should be wary of oversimplification, but the thesis advanced by the Bavarian scholar Jakob Falmareyer in Über die Einstehung der Neugriechen merits attention. Falmareyer's work, which caused deep trauma amidst the Greeks of his day, argued that the Greek nation of modern times was largely descended from Hellenized Albanians and Slavs, with hardly a drop of true Greek blood in their veins. This may have been an exaggeration, but it is less absurd than the notion that every modern Greek is a direct descendant of the inhabitants of ancient Greece. No modern European nation can lay reasonable claim to undiluted ethnic purity. The dispersal of the Slavs encouraged the evolution of the three main Slavonic linguistic groups and the wellsprings of a dozen Slavonic languages. By the 8th century, therefore, the ethnic settlement of the peninsula was beginning to achieve a lasting pattern. The 8th century, indeed, was the point when important social crystallizations occurred. Yet 5 more major migrations had to happen before all the basic population of the future Europe was complete. One of these 5 later migrant groups, the Vikings, were sea raiders. 2 more, the Magyars and the Mongols, were nomads. 2 others, the Moors and the Turks, were warriors of a new religion. Europe was conceived from the most diverse elements, and her birth was painfully protracted. The Empire. From Rome to Byzantium, 330 to 867. From 330 onwards, ruled from the Bosporus, the Roman Empire changed its character. The Romanitas, the Latinity of the empire, was inevitably reduced. But political priorities shifted as well. Henceforth, the heartland lay not in Italy, but in the Balkans and in Asia Minor. The provinces which lay nearest to the emperor's concerns were not Gaul or Spain or Africa, but Egypt, Syria, even Armenia. Increasingly, the frontier to be defended at all costs lay not on the Rhine, but on the lower Danube and the Pontic shore. Recognizing the shift, most historians drop the title of Roman Empire in favor of Byzantine Empire. The emperors and their subjects, however, continued to think of themselves as Romans. Constantine had no intention of abandoning anything but a decayed capital city. The growing divergence of East and West was so slow that it was virtually imperceptible to contemporaries. For them, it was far less impressive than the sturdy strands of continuity. What is more, there is no general consensus about the point where Rome was truly supplanted by Byzantium. In its origins, the split can be traced back to Octavius and Mark Antony, whose rivalry had briefly divided the Roman world for the first time. In which case the gradual emergence of Byzantium and the supremacy of the East might be seen as belated compensation for the tragedy of Antony and Cleopatra. Diocletian, who deliberately chose the eastern half of the empire for himself, has been proposed as the first Byzantine emperor. Other obvious contenders for the title would be Constantine, founder of Constantinople, Justinian,